Hello, this is Barack Lesnar of Barack Lesnar Hoops, and I wanted to do a special video today to discuss the things you should not be doing. I know we're about a little over a month into the fantasy basketball season, and sometimes it's easy to forget, get lost in the weeds, not see the forest for the trees. And the goal of this video is to kind of remind you of certain things that you have to keep in mind in order to continue having success with your fantasy basketball team. A lot of these things are going to be elementary, but sometimes the basics are the most important thing to focus on instead of overcomplicating things. If you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing to Barack Lesnar Hoops. You can do that by clicking right down there where it says Barack Lesnar Hoops. You can also help me out by smashing that like button, and you also should consider joining as a member and top supporter of Barack Lesnar Hoops. Contribute a couple of bucks a month, and there are some perks that come along with it, and there are special perks that come with the new Discord server for Barack Lesnar Hoops. Shh, be on the lookout. It's coming out really soon, sooner than you may even imagine. Some may even say it's completely finished and done and ready for rollout. But you're not here to talk about my Discord server. You are here for this video, so let me give it to you. The first one, as you can see here, is do not forget to check your lineups daily. I know that one can seem so basic. Of course, why wouldn't you check your lineup daily if you have a daily one? Well, it can be easy to forget sometimes. Sometimes life happens, and sometimes you think you set up your lineup and you did it. So try to get in the habit of not only checking your lineup before the game start that day, but perhaps checking a place like rotoworld.com. It's my favorite place for updates, to figure out if there's guys that are going to miss time. Or maybe a game got postponed and you didn't notice, and you have an active player on your bench and a postponed guy in one of your starting spots, and then you lose that production, and it can cost you the entire week. Just a couple of missed games could be the difference between dominating your week and getting crushed that week, especially in these new times that we've been facing. And what I mean by that is it's pretty simple. Just with all the postponed games happening and with injuries that pop up at the last minute, it can really hurt you if you're not getting in that habit of getting on right before the games are scheduled to happen and making sure your lineup is set. That alone, that level of inactivity, even just a day or two out of the week, can really hinder your chances at success for the majority of the season. Do not drop players with long-term value for players with short-term value. And I've been talking a little bit about stocks with the channel, and I would compare this to maybe you have a company you believe in long term, but you see that GameStop is being pumped up, and you sell that position in that long term company to try to get in GameStop. Now, GameStop has gone up a lot, but when you go in for something that's really has short term value, the risk you take is it crashes on you, and you gave up an asset that would have helped you out longer term. And with fantasy basketball, unlike an investment where you can wait on it for years, fantasy basketball, we're really talking about a span of half a year. And you don't want to drop really good players right now, maybe because they're underperforming to your standards, to pick up a guy that's killing it this week, but may not even have a role secured next week. So you want to be very careful with making moves like that. Take, for example, Reggie Jackson. Reggie Jackson's been performing really well over the last few days because Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Patrick Beverly are missing time. Now, if all of a sudden those guys come back, Reggie Jackson loses his value. So let's say you drop a guy who's maybe underperforming. Let me say Robert Covington. Maybe you drop Robert Covington for Reggie Jackson. The next week, Reggie Jackson loses all his value, and Robert Covington turns it on and starts helping you for the remainder of the season. That's a move that's going to gut your team and hurt you. And I know sometimes it can be tempting to try to give up that long-term value just to win the week, but it's still early on enough where you can take some pain right now and really set yourself up for success in the coming months, and you can undo a lot of the damage you're taking right now. Do not drop your studs first month into the season. This is a great one. By that I mean is don't sell low on them. So you don't want to trade Jamal Murray, for example, for an absolute scrub or just somebody who's not that good, because a lot of times players just need time to get into that mid-season form. And there's players that traditionally start slower than others. And once they work their way into that mid-season form, they give you the fantasy production you end up remembering when you drafted them in the first place. So you want to go off of historical trends. You want to bank on guys that are young and still on the upswing of their career. And you just don't want to drop them. You don't want to drop them to the waiver wire for guys that are 2 in the bush versus 1 in the hand. And you want to have faith in your analysis that you did that led you to pick up these guys. I know sometimes it's easy to grow impatient and just think you're wrong, but just like with investing, sometimes you sell a stock right before it blows up. And that's something that happens very similarly here in fantasy basketball. And I'm probably going to be using a lot of investment terms just because they're so very similar, the concepts that apply to both. Another thing I see often is guys who have injured guys on their roster and not utilizing their IR. Figure out how to use your IR, because your IR is one of the best ways to accumulate talent. People end up giving up on guys that are injured even when they have open IR slots, or perhaps they don't have open IR slots, so they're forced to drop them. So if your IR slots are vacant, I would constantly be on the lookout for guys on the waiver wire who could have value at some point. Somebody I had Jeremy Lamb over a month ago. He was only like 7% owned, but I had an available IR spot. The waiver wire was thin, so I figured, hey, I can just throw him in that IR, hold on to him. And now he's been back and he's been producing quality minutes for me for a pickup that at the time wasn't very valued because he was injured. So you take those gambles, and it's not that big of a gamble, just considering that, again, it's an IR spot. It's not really affecting you. It only mostly affects you when they come back healthy and you can't make any moves until you activate them. But at that point, you have an extra asset and you could make some 2-for-1 deals and trades to open up the spot to activate them. So whenever you do a 2-for-1 trade, you have to consider you activating that guy as part of that trade. Which, on the subject of trades, do not spam awful trades. Nothing makes me lose respect for somebody in my league more than them spamming me with just really bad trades. It's very annoying when somebody tries to sell me oceanside property in Ohio. What I mean by that is you are fluffing up your guys, or you're downplaying the guys that I have, and it's just not really based on reality. Or you're trying to sell me on a guy that just had a great week, and you're ignoring the context as to why they had a great week while you're trying to get players that are proven commodities most of the time. So don't be that guy. What normally ends up happening is people just don't want to deal with you, and they don't want to trade with you even when you start making decent offers. You don't want to spam awful trades. Think of it like this. Do you like when somebody pretends that you're dumb, or they try to take you as someone that's just stupid and easy to take advantage of? Because if you send some offensive trade offers to somebody who understands fantasy basketball, that's exactly what you're doing. You're trying to benefit at their expense by offering value that isn't really value. Now, I'm not perfect at this. I tend to overvalue my players and undervalue other people's players, but I do try to offer value when possible. And sometimes it involves putting some skin in the game. You need to get out of your head that every trade has to be a win now trade, or that every trade has to be a win or a massive win. It's just not the way that it works. It's not. I don't care what anyone says. The best trades help both teams out, and they are possible. So if you're one of these people that has in your head that every single trade you make has to be trying to take advantage of someone, that says a whole lot more about you than it says about fantasy basketball, because that is not a requirement at all. It just shows your penchant for wanting to take advantage of people and trying to get more for less. There are opportunities when it's just like, hey, your guy is injured, my guy is healthy, so he's more valuable right now. That's a different story. But when you're just offering two guys you picked up off the waiver wire last week and you're asking for a first or second round pick back, that's just insulting. I'm gonna probably send you a joke trade offer back that's just as bad as your trade offer. So when you reject it immediately, I know that you're just full of it. So don't do it. Do not act like fantasy players owe your fantasy team anything. I hate nothing more than somebody who starts insulting a player, starts calling a player garbage, starts calling them fat, starts getting personal, or even taking it a step further and outright messaging these athletes, demanding an apology, demanding that they play for them, demanding that their fantasy team just can't deal with them not playing, so they need to rush back from whatever injury they have. It happened recently with Miles Turner, who fractured his hand, and the guy demanded that he play through it and even questioned his courage as a man. Do not be that guy. These games are fun, but these NBA players don't pay us any money. We don't pay them money. We don't pay their contracts. They have no obligation to us as fantasy basketball owners. Any obligation they have is to their employer, which are the owners of those NBA teams. We may say we own them in fantasy basketball, but don't act like you actually own these guys. It's very off-putting. It's just classless. And you have to remember these guys are human and they have their own dignity. They have their own family. They have their own situations. They are more than just an asset to help you win fantasy basketball. It's great that we get to play this fantasy basketball and have such a strong connection to this league that the majority of us really love. But again, they owe us absolutely nothing. Do not be the person that does that. I will lose respect for you, and I'd rather not have you as a viewer if you're someone that thinks that's even remotely acceptable. And I said this earlier on, but do not risk late season success chasing early season wins. Sometimes you can grow desperate because you just need to get 3 streamer spots so you can win the week, and then you end up dropping 3 guys who end up being really good for you at the end of the day. You want to be very careful with who you drop as a streamer. I normally don't turn a streamer spot on for someone that I think has the potential to just be a long-term asset for me, or someone I can trade later on for a better piece. But I'm not going to drop amazing quality to the waiver wire just to chase some guy who may be able to help me this week, because it is the starter on that team got injured, so he's starting for 3 games. I used Reggie Jackson earlier as an example. Don't do it. Want to reiterate that point because it's a very important one. Another trap that people fall for is trading for the sake of trading. So just saying that you got a trade done without really calculating or gauging how it actually helps your team. This is one that I have to recommend to you to really keep in mind. Don't shuffle chairs on the Titanic. That means don't feel the need to make movement just to say you're making movement. Don't do treadmill trades where sure you moved, but you're still in the exact same place. You want to keep your structure for your team in mind. You want to keep your build in mind, and you want to make trades that you think make your team legitimately stronger, not just do trades for the sake of trading where you're just trading comparable players or trading for players that are actually going to end up hurting you. It can be very tempting to do a trade. There's definitely a dopamine hit when you get a trade done, but you have to be careful that you're not trading away your value because you just want to trade. All right, guys. And the last one I want to discuss is do not neglect your build and roster flexibility. What I mean by that is don't grab 10 centers and then you have no small forwards or point guards. Don't grab 12 point guards and then you have 2 small forwards. You want to keep a general structure for your team. So if I know I have 6 point guards, that may be too many. I know I have 2 that I could probably trade to have an area where I can be more balanced, and balance is key. There's nothing worse than having to sit guys out because they don't fit any of your rosters because you loaded up on the same positions and don't have enough of the other positions. So don't neglect your build when making pickups, when dropping players, when making trades. You want to have a structure in mind. There may be situations due to injuries or other things that come up where you have to pivot your build, but the closer your build is to ideal, the easier it is to pivot, because maybe, well, I was good at field goal percentage. I'm not going to be good at field goal percentage anymore, but maybe I can capitalize and improve on my free throw percentage because the guy that I had was hurting my free throw percentage. So maybe now that's the asset I focus on, and maybe I grab a guy that gets me more steals than I was getting. What I mean by that is you want to be strategic in the changes you make with your team. You don't just want to pick up players that don't fit with what you're doing. You want them to be like a puzzle piece where at the end of the day, you put all the pieces together. The final picture is a fantasy basketball championship team. Don't just grab pieces for the sake of grabbing pieces, because it can end up hurting your entire strategy and making your team suffer because of it. Was this video helpful? Have you done any of these things so far this season? I hope you haven't, but if you are, let me know below, because hey, we are all human. We all make huge mistakes, and a lot of these would be huge mistakes. Again, if you like that content, smash that like button for me. Subscribe to Barack Lesnar Hoops. Visit the official website, www.baracklesnarhoops.com. And stay tuned. The best way to stay tuned for that Discord server coming to you very soon. Join the fantasy basketball group on Facebook, because as soon as it's out, I'm going to post it there. So you can find us on Facebook, Barack Lesnar Hoops Fantasy Basketball. But moving forward, we're going to have a mass migration to this Discord server. It's a lot more organized. It's a lot more clean. And there's going to be, if you're a paid Patreon, there's going to be access to certain things such as one-on-one conversations with me, and subscriber-only chats and video chats and voice chats, perks with this Discord server that are really going to, it's like having me in your pocket. As the channel is growing, it's getting a lot harder to give you individualized help. It was easier when I had 600 subscribers, but now that we're pushing 2,400, getting into the thousands now, it's just not possible. So if you want to have Barack Lesnar Hoops in your pocket outside of just getting these general videos that all my subscribers and viewers get, I would highly suggest being on the lookout for that Discord server and considering being a Patreon, because really you unlock access to Barack Lesnar Hoops for only a couple of bucks a month, and that could be very lucrative for you, especially if you're in your money leagues. I have diamond tier players that love sounding off and getting my feedback, and to either make a decision or not make a decision, and I'm gonna give it to you straight. But again, I'm gonna start limiting access, that sort of one-on-one access, to those Patreon subscribers. And if you don't want to join Patreon, you could join below. And if you join the $9.99 YouTube tier, you'll have access to that Patreon access too. So you actually get a discount by doing it through YouTube. And that's only for right now. Okay. Because once that gets going, it's going to be through the Patreon only. So you could get grandfathered in right now at a lower price by joining below. All right, guys, I'm trying to turn this into a profession and a career, and you can help me achieve that. I can continue producing quality fantasy basketball content, and you're supporting the work I'm doing. Another way you can support this work is watch one of these videos above as recommended by me and the YouTube algorithm. Until next time, this is Barack Lesnar of Barack Lesnar Hoops. Thank you for watching. Much love. Happy Friday. Enjoy your weekend. See you soon.